In this lesson, we'll be creating a particle system as a mat. Okay, so where we left off in the last lesson, we only had the M and the A finished in this. I've gone ahead and finished up the N, T, R, A, and I've also staggered that timing out. So now they're about 10 frames apart, and then the next letter starts and so on. So they last over about 100 frames. So now that that's finished, let's go ahead and we'll move on. I'm going to come over here. We're in that mantra logo image comp now, and you can see that we've got all of our blues up here at the top. We've got all of the drops, but then here at the bottom we have mantra orange, and that's where we're going to be working. So go ahead and double click that mantra orange, and let's go ahead and start trying to use an alpha mat with particles to reveal one of these pieces. So I'm just going to start with this kind of rounded piece that you see right there. So I can either solo that or just turn off the eyeballs for the other layers. Doesn't really matter. Now, to create a particle system, we first need to create a solid. So let's come up here to layer, new, solid, and it doesn't really matter what color it is. So I'm just going to choose white. Go ahead and say OK to that. And we're going to be using CC Particle Systems 2. So go up to your effects and presets and you can just type in particle, and you only have 3 choices here. So you can just grab that one and drop it right on there. And if you scrub, you can see that right away that starts to give you particles that are just really the default. Okay, so I want to come in here and start tweaking the look of these particles. So let's come over here, and first thing I want to change is the physics. So I'm going to change these other things like birth rate and longevity later on, but the physics are really throwing me off right now. So this is set to explosive, and I want to change this to direction. So what that's going to do is kind of make these particles more of a stream than just emitting from the center in all directions. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the velocity down to 0 so that we don't see that large arc of particles. It's really going to be more of just kind of this stream, like I said. And the direction that's okay for now. I don't really want to change that. You can see that that doesn't actually change the direction they're moving in, just kind of spins it around, really is what that looks like. We can go ahead and go into our particle settings and change that. So right now they're turned to line. I'm going to change them to a faded sphere. So you can go ahead and click that. So now we have just kind of this sort of ethereal looking, sort of bubbly kind of particles. Let's go ahead and change a few other properties here. So let's just pull this down. I think that we really don't need to mess with the color very much because we're using this as a mat. We could go in and change the seed a little bit though. That doesn't change the behavior of the particles. It just kind of changes what they look like as far as which particle is born when, but not really the parameters by which they're governed. Let's go ahead and maybe turn up the birth rate a little bit too, just to make this more dense. So this is really going to start to feel a lot more thick now because I really want it to be thick right here on the end. Maybe just about 16, 16.2, something like that. And then let's turn the longevity down so they don't last quite as long, just a little bit here. And now what I want to do is to mess with that producer. So the producer is what tells us kind of what we want something to, where we want something to be emitted from. So I want it to kind of move along this here and therefore kind of use that curve as the way that those particles go. So right now they're just going straight down because it's not moving. But if we could key some movement, those particles would follow along. So let me just kind of show you what I mean. Let's go up here and just start these particles right here at the very top. So I'll go ahead and set a position. And I'm going to hit the U key so that I can see where that key was positioned. And then we'll move it over here. And let's just go forward a bit and move this down. So you can see now how that arc of particles kind of changed based on that. And then let's maybe try in the middle here. Let's move this down a little bit. So you can see we can kind of get it to start following that, but it's really not perfect. It's kind of frustrating actually that that isn't following along with that curve perfectly. And I could go in and add a whole lot more anchor points to try to make it perfect, but you can see it kind of goes straight across here, so we'd have to keep moving it over. And there's a better way to do this. There's a better way that we can get our particle to follow along this curve, and that is to use a null object. So I want to show you how to create a path of that null object that's going to have a curve in it, because this, you can see we can't even really see that motion path. We can't see how it follows along with this curve. We really only have the ability to set those keyframes. So I'm going to come back here to the beginning, and I'm just going to hit that position stopwatch again so we don't have any keyframes on this position for the producer. And then we're going to go over how to create that null object and how to make it follow that path in our next lesson. So stick around and you'll learn how we can move this over time in a much easier way.